When you play the Game of Thrones, you
subscribe and like,
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel, and today's video we are going to be talking about the 10 best and worst changes from Fire and Blood to House of the Dragon, and I will be talking about both Season 1 and Season 2, so I finally wanted to get to this because I was going to do this after Season 1, but I thought let's wait till Season 2, so I'll have more things to kind of go off of for the best and worst, and so I compiled a list of my top 10 best and worst moments. Let me know what you guys think. If I forgot any, I probably did. There's so many changes from Fire and Blood to House of the Dragon that are both good and bad. So some of them I just might forget. There's a lot of them. So let me know if there are any that aren't on the list that you think should be, or if you think there are some on the list that maybe shouldn't be. So let's kind of get into it. And I do want to say I'm going to do one good and then one bad. I want to kind of balance it. I don't want to just do like one whole section of negative, one whole section about positive. Kind of want to intermingle both, and we'll kind of talk about it. But I did want to say a big thank you to my members and Patreons. If you did want to become one, you do get exclusive videos. I do upload one a week that is just exclusive to Patreons and members, and you also do get videos early. So let's hop in to my top 10 best and worst changes from Fire and Blood to House of the Dragon. So let's start off at number 10. I think a really good change for the best side of things is Aemond in his youth. Something we don't really see a lot of in Fire and Blood is actually how kind of this event is impacting like the kids, the younger generation. We see how it's affecting like Rhaenyra and Alicent's relationship and things like that in the book, but we really don't know too much about Aemond in his youth. It's kind of where we've had to kind of pick and choose and kind of predict what he was maybe like in his younger years to formulate the person that he becomes. Well, in House of the Dragon, they do, I think, a much better job of painting who Aemond is in his youth, especially seeing how he was bullied by not only his brother, but also it seems like Jace and Luke. He is someone that is very interesting right from the get-go because we get him also claiming Vhagar, what was going through his mind, and even the after effects into that as well. I think giving Aemond more of a strong foundation was really key to us discovering who this character was going to be moving forward. And so I think one of the best changes is just simply showing us more of Aemond when he was younger. Now, starting my worst side, number 10 for worst, I have Laenor's disappearance and or quote-unquote death. In the book, there's a number of options that's given to us as to what actually occurs and who actually kills Laenor. But at least it's made pretty clear that Laenor is out of the picture. He never re-enters the story. He is just dead. So, in that regard, there's a lot of different ways you can speculate who did it. You can think about maybe Damon and Rhaenyra did it. You can think maybe somebody else did it. Whatever, right? But in the show, they took it a step further, and they made it to where Laenor actually lives because he needs to be out of the picture so that Rhaenyra can actually marry Damon. But it's done in a really weird way, because then you also have how does a writer then connect to Sea Smoke and Alyn of Hull. And even in Season 2, that was never really explained or even talked about. There's some fans, and I am one of those, that believe Laenor was killed off screen based upon some stuff earlier on in the season about Sea Smoke's activities and the way that Sea Smoke was feeling. But we still don't have this answer, so this could maybe change if they actually did something with Laenor going forward or gave some sort of explanation, but as of right now, I think this needed to be on the list. I also did want to point out an honorable mention I did. I wanted to put the Stepstones on here, but I felt like it was, of all the things on here, maybe the least impactful, so I did have the honorable mention of being the Stepstones. If you didn't know, if you've only watched the show, in the book, the Stepstones is a conflict that goes on for much longer than it's shown on the television. And also the other thing about it is the Stepstones really is a crucial event for showing us how great of commanders and leadership is with Corlys and Damon. Really big foreshadowing into the leadership and military prowess that the black side of things have during the dance. Something that unfortunately was not really brought to the table with House of the Dragon. Going back to the best side of things, number 9, I have Otto's dismissal. So in the book, we don't really get as in-depth in terms of like what was the conversation going on between Otto and Aegon when they actually like depart, right? Or they separate. In the book, it's more like Otto just hasn't been doing a lot of action. Aegon gets tired of it, and so publicly basically strips him of his power, but he stays in King's Landing type of situation. In the show, I think probably the best scene of season 2, we saw that Otto basically gets to clap back, right? Putting Aegon down and almost laughing at him when, Aegon saying Viserys wanted me to be king and Otto basically laughing. I think the way that this scene went down, it gave Otto, more of a chance to kind of clap back to being put down as the hand of the king. I really like the way that this was done in the show, and so I think that was one of the better changes that we saw from book to show. Number 9 for worst, Criston Cole in season 1. So I put this in general, Criston Cole in season 1. If you want to go to specific ones, for the first one, like killing Joffrey at a wedding in the middle of everyone, that should have basically gotten him killed, but nothing came of this. Really weird scene. You also have Criston Cole, who's not listening to the king when we see that in episode 7. In terms of Alicent ordering him basically to get Luke and to take his eye out and all that stuff. Criston Cole was not a very well-written character in season 1, and I think that's a big shame. They also took away his Kingmaker moment. That's another part of this. Criston Cole in season 1 just was not a very good character, especially compared to his book counterpart. Going back up to the best, number 8. This is kind of a weird one because it's like, how do you have this as a really good change? But I actually do think Aemma Arryn's death is much more impactful and it's more interesting in the show than it is the book. In both versions, her death is really, really hard to read in terms of it has a deep impact on, people around her. But in the show, they go a step further, right? They make Viserys have to be the one to, are we going to cut up Aemma to try and save your son? And how that doesn't even end up working either, and it was all for nothing. And Aemma had to go through this horrible, horrible pain because of, Viserys wanting a son. And it's something that's reflected then later on with Damon and Laena's relationship. I think that Aemma Arryn's death is really, really important to the start of this show, and it has rippling effects, right? Because of the decisions Viserys made and his love of Aemma Arryn, that then in turn reflects the way that he treats Rhaenyra and why he makes Rhaenyra the heir. So I think Aemma Arryn's death is just treated more as a big, powerful, huge moment in the show than it is the book. And so I really love the way that they did that in season 1. Number 8, this is just going to be just a blatant Daeron missing. Season 1, Daeron was not even mentioned, I don't believe. Season 2, he's mentioned a little bit, but he still really is yet to be shown. We saw his dragon in the season 2 finale, but Daeron missing to me is quite a bad change for the first 2 seasons. He's just going to be basically sprung into action in season 3 with basically no build-up to him at all. He's one of the best characters during the dance, especially on the green side of things. And for him to just be missing for the first 2 seasons and almost treated like he's not even a character, not a good change in my opinion. And I'm excited to maybe see that character in House of the Dragon moving forward, even if I have fallen out a bit of love from House of the Dragon. I am interested to see how they'll do Daeron moving forward. Number 7 for best changes. I think Hugh Hammer's origin, right? They basically took a character that in the book has no build up to this character at all. We see him, the first time we see him is during the Dragon Seeds, the sowing, more or less. And in the show, they took a different approach. They decided to give us more of this character, have him be the POV kind of King's Landing and how the small folk are really being pressured by the dance and all of those events, and showing that this is a guy that is very kind of courageous. He's someone that, wants to do what he believes is right for kind of his family, and it's building towards a very interesting character that will happen, later on in the House of the Dragon, but it'll be interesting to see how they move forward with the book plot of that character. But so far, I think Hugh Hammer was a really good introduction into Season 2, and definitely a good change to show us more of him before we got to the sowing. Number 7 for worst changes. Once again, I just have blatantly another character missing. Nettles being missing. I didn't put this one higher than it is based upon the fact that we don't know exactly how Rhaenyra's plot's going to go yet. And so maybe we could see Rhaenyra's plot be pretty good so that you don't miss Nettles too much. But Nettles being missing to me is just a massive miss. One, it is basically in Fire and Blood, one of the most unique characters George writes in Fire and Blood, being this character that almost has no tie to the Targaryen, really. It's just this small folk character, basically disproving the whole idea that the Targaryen blood is needed to claim a dragon. And this character is important to how the plot goes with characters like Damon. I think Nettles missing is just such a weird thing that the show did. I couldn't imagine why they did this outside of just combining characters because they didn't want to introduce another character. But I don't know. I think it's really weird that they took away Nettles from the show. And I know Ryan Condal tries playing with the idea that maybe Nettles isn't gone in the show, but come on. The character's pretty much gone already. It is how it is. They're trying to backtrack at this point because of the backlash towards it. But yeah, I think Nettles missing, huge problem. And it's so much of a problem that even George was not happy with it. So I think it deserved its spot. Number 6. Alyn of Hull. Again, I think this one's a little step above Hugh Hammer because I really love Alyn. And Alyn's a character that in the book doesn't really get a lot of, I guess, book time or page time during the war. He's a character that gets most of his characterization towards the back end of the dance, and then going forward, he's a really important character. But to me, showing us this character is really, really awesome because he's going to be the person that, again, there's a little bit of spoilers, but he's going to be the person that, you know, is going to take up the Velaryon name, and seeing how they changed that, right? Where in the story, in the book, we only see him right at the very beginning of the Dragon Seeds plot. He is someone that shows that, like, he doesn't like getting special treatment from Corlys because he's his son. He also is spiteful towards Corlys for being a bad father, you know, parading Laenor around them when they were also his sons, and they never got any of that treatment. And I think it's so interesting the way the show has built on Alyn and Corlys' relationship. Alyn's, you know, like, outburst in the finale, one of the only good scenes, in my opinion, of the finale, was a powerful scene that built upon who Alyn is as a person. I really like what they've done with Alyn so far. I think they've taken him to new heights in the show. I'll be excited to see where they take the character moving forward. Number 6, for the worst, I'm going back to season 1. I was not a fan of how they did the Green Council. To me, it felt like a complete break in Alicent's character, where this is, to me, it's not the moment where the character splits, because really you would say it's the end of episode 8, which we'll kind of talk about here in a second. But in terms of Alicent, she's a character that was shown growing and growing more and more distant and away from Rhaenyra, and pushing her line onto the throne because she believed Rhaenyra would kill her line. And so she starts pushing Aegon to become the new king after Viserys dies. And so all this has been pretty much put in stone. Episode 8 is basically to show that exact fact. And then episode 9, you have Alicent, who doesn't want Aegon to be on the throne, is shocked by them wanting to do this. And it kind of makes it to where you have this split in the green camp between like Alicent and Otto. And it just almost comes out of nowhere. It doesn't feel earned at all. It feels extremely weird to me. I think even the way Lord Beesbury's death is done is kind of laughable. It's just really weird. You have Lord Commander Westerling, who just is allowed to leave for some reason and then never shows up in season 2. Just a really weird sequence of events. They took one of my favorite moments in Fire and Blood in the Green Council, and they completely destroyed it, in my opinion. I don't think it was very good at all. And it's one of the biggest mistakes, I think, in season 1. So the Green Council comes in at number 6. Number 5, I have Aegon Targaryen as king. Again, one of the best changes from season 2 is Aegon became much more of a complex character. We saw the bad side of Aegon in season 1. In season 2, they came back with showing us someone that was a bit more considerate of the small folk. He was someone trying to be a good king, to live up to not only Viserys, but Aegon the Conqueror, his namesake. We saw someone that was deeply conflicted by how to be king and how he's respected, and it all comes down to, you know, the Battle of Rook's Rest, and he basically gets burnt to a crisp and all this stuff. And I think Aegon was by far the best character of season 2. I don't think it's really debatable. He was by far the best. And it's a lot of it is the change that they made from Fire and Blood. Fire and Blood, Aegon is not a likable person at all. We don't get to see any of that, really. He is just straight up kind of an asshole. And so I really love the change of giving him more nuance and making him more likable. As Ricky kind of talked about before this season really dropped, and he'd seen the episodes before they came out, they gave Aegon actual nuance so that he's just not some like Joffrey kind of type of character again. And so I did like that, and I think that was a great change that House of the Dragon made. Number 5, worst changes. I think Blood and Cheese. And I know it's weird because I have talked about publicly on this channel that I think Blood and Cheese was good for the show. Like, it did enough that the casual audience was really going to like it. But you can't deny, in terms of what we got from Blood and Cheese in the book versus what we got in the show, the book is just miles better. The actual emotion you feel reading this scene, as, you have Alicent and Helaena, and the just sheer emotion where Helaena has to choose between two of her sons, which one she's going to kill, and then the opposite ends up happening. It's this horrific moment that really shows how dark both sides of this conflict are. The Greens have done some bad things. The black side of things do some bad things as well. And it hits so much harder in the book. Whereas the show, it just feels really clunky. You have Blood and Cheese stumbling around, and specifically the Red Keep, and you see, them going through the throne room with Aegon on the throne. It was really clunky. You see, Cheese doesn't even really know how to get to, Aemond or any of the people they're trying to get to. And then even when you have this idea that it's Helaena isn't forced to choose between her two kids, it's her just choosing which one is the boy. It felt really weird. And then Helaena then goes and sees her mother and Criston Cole banging. It was a really, really weird scene. It wasn't as nearly as good enough as the book was, and I think it was definitely not a good change. Someone who had this as one of their 3 moments where they were interested to see how they were going to do it. To me, they didn't really stick the landing. I thought it was good, and it was good enough, but it was not anything like living up to what Fire and Blood put forward. Best, for number 4 for the best, I put Harrenhal. In Fire and Blood, we really don't get to see Harrenhal having that personality or that kind of allure that it has, right? We don't really get to see what actually happens in Harrenhal. There's maybe some speculation there, but this show did a lot in terms of giving Harrenhal a personality, right? Showing us what happened to the Strongs in Harrenhal exactly, that it was Larys, and it was this horrific moment that gets Harwin and Lionel Strong killed. Then we come back to Harrenhal in season 2, and it feels like this ghost castle that's mysterious, but also is run down. They made Harrenhal a character. And regardless of what I think about Damon's plot as a whole in season 2, Harrenhal, you cannot doubt, was a fantastic castle. It was a fantastic addition, and it lived up to really all the magical sides of Harrenhal that we kind of thought of from the book. And so I love what they did with Harrenhal, and I thought it was one of the better changes of House of the Dragon. Number 4 worst. Yeah, this one's just kind of a general one, but Aegon's Dream. Aegon's Dream, if you think about its implications and what things it's just completely damaged in the show, it has to be one of the worst changes. Bringing in this idea that ties us basically right back to Game of Thrones and the White Walker plotline was just a mistake. People don't want to be reminded, first of all, of Game of Thrones and the way it ended. But think about what it did. Aegon's Dream results in Alicent declaring Aegon the king because of some mutterings that Viserys has on his deathbed. It completely undermines what Alicent was already doing and makes it more or less Alicent makes a mistake putting Aegon on the throne when that was never the case leading up to the end of episode 8. It was just weird there. You have Aegon's Dream playing a massive role in this vision thing that Damon gets that basically completely destroys his character. Aegon's Dream to me just was a massive miss in the show, and I don't think Aegon's Dream is a bad thing. I just think the way it was used in this show was really bad. So, not a big fan of Aegon's Dream's inclusion in House of the Dragon season 1 and 2, but I guess we'll just have to see where they go from it. Number 3 in the best changes, I think the Cargyll twins and their battle and or death in episode 2 of season 2 was fantastic, right? Because we have a number of different ways that it kind of goes out in the book. And so we're not clear as to what the ending is. I think most people would have agreed that the ending is they both give each other injuries and they die in each other's arms. They kind of took that idea and they played it where it all happens right out in front of Rhaenyra. It's an assassination attempt. It's an assassination attempt that was very close to killing Rhaenyra, and then watching Eric kill himself because of his own actions, because of what this war has done. It's turned brother against brother. I think everything that they did in episode 2 to build to that moment with the Cargyll twins was beautifully done. It shows the horrors of what this war should be and how it turns brother against brother. I think they took what was already good in Fire and Blood and made it great. This is one of those really big moments to me in House of the Dragon season 2 that was much better in the show than it was the book. Number 3 for the worst changes, I just simply put Alicent and Rhaenyra's meetings. These meetings served really no purpose to the story. They slowed down the story in terms of Rhaenyra and Alicent's actions, not wanting to do any type of actual war. I think even the logistics of how they got to both places, Rhaenyra sneaking into King's Landing, was really weird, super dangerous, super stupid, doesn't make any sense with what was happening in the story. Then episode 3's meeting is also undercut because they meet in episode 8 anyway. So episode 8 basically just talks about everything they talk about in episode 3 again. And then when you get to episode 8, when they meet up, at that point you don't need it because they've already met up in episode 3 and they already discussed the same things. And then also you have it to where we see Alicent somehow gets to Dragonstone off screen, and you're left to basically think about how that happened because Aemond just shut down the entire way to leave. He literally says if any boats are leaving, they need to be investigated, make sure who's on it, whatnot. And then Alicent literally 5 minutes later somehow escapes. Not only does she get past the blockade, but she also gets past Aemond not letting anyone leave. That all happens off screen. So again, I think none of those things work. But then, and even in the second meeting, we see that they actually just straight up destroy Alicent's character. She sells out all of her children. She sells out Otto, and she sells out Criston Cole. You can't sit here and tell me she doesn't care about any of those people. We had an entire section of an episode where Alicent was talking to Gwaine about her son that she hasn't really gotten to meet, and she has questions about how she raised her own children. And so she's willing to allow Aegon to be killed when she was the one that pushed Aegon to become king. She's okay with Daeron basically being killed because if they lose the war, Daeron will be killed. He poses a threat to Rhaenyra's throne. And then Otto also was going to die, obviously. And Criston Cole was as well. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I have Alicent and Rhaenyra meetups at number 3. The second best change that I have of the show is I think Alicent's age. Now this one, I think I almost thought about putting lower because I think in the long run, it had some really big issues in the second season. But in the first season, I thought it was a fantastic change because having Alicent and Rhaenyra have more of a personal connection makes their kind of separation even more heart-wrenching. It makes it more impactful. It makes it more understandable to see why they hate each other so much. And so I love the way that they did that, right? One of the biggest moments, I think, of season 1, and even to this day, I think one of the best scenes in all of House of the Dragon is Alicent in episode 5 when she comes out in the green dress, basically silencing Viserys and basically declaring herself to be the enemy, right? Taking the Hightower side, and she's going to try to put her line now on the throne, and that's what we come back to in episode 6. And so I think, to me, making Alicent the same age or around the same age as Rhaenyra made a lot of sense. Now, in season 2, that had issues because they made Alicent and Rhaenyra closer in age, and because they were kind of the fan favorites, we got a lot of the things in that Alicent and Rhaenyra meetups that felt forced and just weren't that good. So there's kind of really good highs of this one, but there's also some lows to this one. So you could argue that this one maybe should be a little bit lower, but I don't know. I still really like the change for season 1. Number 2 for worst, I have Damon Targaryen. I think overall this character has been horrible in House of the Dragon. First season, he's just straight up a villain. He takes every bad action that was even rumored in Fire and Blood. He is a character that's not morally gray at all. And then when we finally get into season 2 and the character starts to become kind of somewhat morally gray, building the character a little bit and trying to give him an actual character arc, maybe similar to Theon's, they completely screw it up in the finale and break Damon's character as a whole, turning him into somebody that's worried about fate and the White Walkers and having him say winter is coming. Damon Targaryen is by far the worst character from book to show, in my opinion, but I do think there is something a little worse than Damon Targaryen in the show. But before we get there, let's talk about our number 1 best change. I think this is pretty obvious. Number 1 best change is Viserys. Viserys in the book was just somebody that seemed like he was very greedy, that he just liked, to drink and eat. He seemed a lot like Robert in a lot of ways. He was somebody that did not help Rhaenyra at all secure her throne. He didn't even seem like somebody that cared that much about anyone, really. And what the show does is the show gives Viserys a lot of complexities, how he struggles with, Rhaenyra and parenting, how he tries to defend her over and over again from all these different attacks, and that paying off in episode 8 when he comes to save her one last time. Viserys Targaryen is by far the most improved character from book to show. He is by far still the best written character in terms of House of the Dragon Season 1 or 2 that they've done so far. And I can't say enough about Paddy Considine, who played Viserys. By far, I think the best character of the show and the best change overall. But the worst change comes down to Rhaenys episode 9. Again, this goes against everything George R.R. Martin has ever written. As we glorify Rhaenys basically bursting in on Aegon's coronation, there's like heroic music. Rhaenys kills like hundreds of people, and it's a complete breakdown of Rhaenys' character. And then season 2, it doesn't even talk about any of those things. It acts like it didn't even happen. It is a complete destruction of what A Song of Ice and Fire has always preached. And even when you think about Rhaenys as a character, she fundamentally doesn't make any sense when you look at this idea of, okay, Rhaenys is willing to kill hundreds of people in this little, she breaks through the floor type scene, but she isn't willing to kill the Greens, who she knows is going to start a civil war. It just is still, to me, the weirdest decision, the most dumb decision I've ever seen in this show. It still holds up, even though there's a lot of things in season 2 I did not like, and I feel like that's pretty, you can tell by the list. I just don't know what they were on. I don't know what drugs they had to have been taken to write that scene. The only thing I can think of is they wanted a big dragon scene in episode 9, and it just failed. Just don't understand why they made this decision. But let me know what you guys think about my top 10 best and worst moments or characters or any of that stuff in House of the Dragon Season 1 and 2. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any other ones that you'd like to put on here, go ahead, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.